good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and Disembodied Hands, Wendy, along with her undead minions, Justin and John. How are you all today? Anne clan? Oh dear. Clan with an E, huh? Oh dear. I guess that makes us fancy, right? The extra N-E just makes us fancy. Do you like my spooky voice, Quindy? I get the feeling you like your spooky voice. Oh, dear, dear. You do. All right, good. Then my work here is done. Oh, man. Allergies on full attack today. Hopefully I won't sneeze at y'all. Fancy clan is fancy. Exactly. Alrighty. It's a Ghostwalker, and she's almost done. Like, really, if you look at her, she's really quite painted a lot, but not the NMMs, non-metallic metals. So, yeah, it's just been bad. Even the papa has had like mucusy bits in her eyes from whatever's in the air out here. Hey guys, so I have a question for you. I actually just asked this on my Discord too, but I always try to keep up on the industry, and I haven't actually looked at this stuff for a while. So tell me who you all think, and you can say Reaper if you want, but I'm looking like for outside of the stuff that I know. So tell me who you think has some of the best metallics in the industry these days. I'm not looking for sparkly. I'm looking for smooth. Even if it's less shiny, I'm looking for smooth. I'm not looking for alcohol-based metallics, not at all interested, only water-based. And I'm not interested in a range of colors. What I'm really looking for is really bright gold and brass type colors and really bright silver. You think so, huh, Shadow Raven? Well, I'll give them a chance. That's easy. That's an easy little hop over to a Hobby Lobby. I will check it out. Because, you know, yeah, I'm asking for metallics. I want to mess around with metallics a little bit more coming up. And so I have the airbrush line. I find they're actually beguiler. They're very hard to do. They don't take washes and glazes very well. The finish that you get with them is a little bit... just doesn't really take the glazes very well at all. That's the problem I'm having with them. That's why I'm asking, actually, because I own the entire airbrush line as far as the metallics. Can't do that, Cranston. They're out of print. Let's in-print, not out of print, in-print. And actually, you know, the old Partha metallics were very similar to the Reaper, to be absolutely honest with you. I used Partha for years, yeah. You think Scale 75? I have heard Scale 75 had decent metallics. Oh, I'm sorry, Quindy. Yo, Roger. So yeah, I will say, if you guys are looking to do like fine detailing in metallics, then the Vallejo airbrush are quite good. Like I use it for doing my micro abrasions and stuff, the chrome especially. If I'm doing like really tarnished silver with scraped edges. Is that Scale 75, like, is it their normal line or their fantasy line, Pendrake, or is it like all the same these days? I have the air color. I prefer the airbrush Grey Wolf. The airbrush colors from Scale 75 as far as what I use them for. But again, they aren't a great base coat. But again, I'm looking for smooth, and all I'm looking for really is a really bright silver, really bright gold, or brass type of color. But is that because they're actually sparkly, Pendrake? That's not necessarily what I'm looking for. I'm not actually looking for a brighter metallic. I'm looking for a very smooth flake. So brighter metallics tend to be a little sparkly, just a little bit have that glistening look to them. I'm actually not looking for that. Which is why the airbrush ones work, but the finish is weird. Golden fluids. Oh, I don't... okay. Okay, so even though they say iridescent, they're not. They're just lying. Got it. Golden fluids. I'll look. Because, you know, art companies have a lot of money to put behind this stuff. It bugs me that they call it iridescent, though. They're not. But I can check them out. Cool, Dogfather. Hope you had a good time. Fantasy, huh? All right. Oh, look. It makes sense that the fantasy would be brighter. But yeah, so essentially I'm looking for really, really smooth metallics. Actually, more like the Reaper Classic metallics than anything. But a little bit brighter if I can get it. Not a water-based. Yeah, that's the problem, Ultra Squid, is that I'm not a solvent person. I really don't like them. Like, the exception is when I picked up oils again recently, but even then, like, I've dropped oils temporarily just because I hate dealing with solvents and the finish. I'll go back to them, but they are definitely, it's just definitely not my preferred medium at this point. So yeah, I try not to use solvent-based paints too, just because of environmental and my own personal, like, just kind of likes and dislikes. I just hate the cleanup. I'm not a big fan. So yeah. But yeah, I know that there are plenty of super smooth, awesome alcohol-based metallics out there, but that's not what I'm looking for. Because if I'd used those, then probably I'd need to use oil glazes over the top. I want to stick to my medium. Yeah, I'll go look. I assume that Hobby Lobby and Michaels still have, still carry them. But though maybe I'll look online. I bet I can find them online. Just because I don't have a lot of time to run around this weekend. We're doing a lot of post-marriage stuff. But yeah, thanks for the recommends, guys. If anybody else out there wants to recommend, feel free. Has anybody actually used the newer Games Workshop metallics? Because they used to be, Games Workshop used to have excellent metallics. But I have not used the super, you know, and they're super pricey, so you don't want to just pick up a bottle and play with it usually. Yeah, you're probably right, Grey Wolf. Right, yeah. If you don't have any, then yeah. But I can look into it. Although I've used Vallejo's, I assume, see, Vallejo's not great at mixing, at changing up their game, so I assume their metallics now are the same as they always were, and I have used Vallejo's traditional metallics before, and was just not, just weren't what I was looking at. Yeah, I figured that a lot of you would not use GW metallics and wouldn't have an opinion on the new ones, so maybe I will try and get a bottle just for the heck of it. Since I don't use much metallic. You know what's bugging me on this? Her legs are really, really smooth, and I feel like I want to do the cape that way. Metal Alchemy. Yeah, I just don't need a box. Like, that's the problem, Pendrake, with that. But maybe I can just look up the individual paints. Like, I really don't want a box because I only want the bright gold and the bright silver. Okay, so here's a tip for y'all. If you can find the gold and silver flakes, and sometimes they have a different flake for brass, so you have to kind of look at it. But if you can find the purest gold and silver in any metallic line, you can mix anything else from that. You don't need everything else. All you need are the brightest, purest, closest to the actual flake. At that point, it's a metal medium. You mix your own metallics from there. Works great. Yeah, maybe mold, Quindy. Because especially if you have allergies year-round and you live in a moist climate, I have a mold allergy. In Wisconsin, my allergies were nonstop. Except for the winter. Like, I didn't have any allergies in winter. Because then the mold was all frozen. But maybe molds, because most places don't track them. Although maybe where you are, they do. Alright, so let's do some NMM and M&Ms. And I still have to pick, that's right, I was going to do my yellow-orange. Let's do that. Let's block in our yellow-orange. Let's use lantern yellow. And I'm going to use just a little orange in it. Yeah, they probably do sell singles, Pendrake. I'll have to just look up the colors. I feel like because I'm not a big metallics user, I'm not as knowledgeable about the different lines, and I decided I wanted to fix that. So I'm probably going to pick up, whatever you guys recommend, I'm probably going to pick up a bottle or two and kind of go head to head and probably do a PDF about it for the Patreon. NMMs. Yes, exactly. Gibson, exactly. Yeah, because I feel like that would be a cool PDF to like just take my various metallics, including Reaper, and kind of just play with them. Because the thing is that metallics, just like every other paint, are going to be great at some things and not as good at others. Most companies in the industry use roughly the same series of flakes. Not necessarily from the same company, though, but they're all like mica-based, except with the exception of the New Bones flakes, which are silica-based. But yeah, so I'm kind of interested because the base they're in is going to be very different, and that can affect your experience with them. If metallics are put in a heavier base, then they're going to fall out of solution easier when thinned, for example. So I really want to kind of do. Oh, good. Yeah, well, sometimes they sell, like, they have more variety on your site, although actually Scale 75 is moving in the U.S. right now, so maybe I should wait till they get to their new place. I think they said they were still taking orders during their move, though. Yeah. Yeah, but Vince uses metallics maybe a little different than me, Beguiler. This is the thing, okay, this is how I am. And there's a class of people in this world who are like Anne. So the class of people in the world who are like Anne kind of absorb what everybody else is kind of saying on the tertiary of them, but we don't actually go, when it comes to this sort of thing, something that's in our area of expertise, we actually don't go looking for other opinions. Instead, we grab what we can and we form our own opinion. And I've been like that about, it's pretty much anything that I have a fair degree of knowledge in. Anything I don't, then I'll go and read and watch videos, I'll do whatever, right? If I'm looking for something that's right outside of my areas of knowledge. But if it's in my area of knowledge, I know enough to judge what I need. And so it's weird. I don't go and actually look at anybody else. I ask roughly for suggestions, but then I form my own opinion. Because when you watch a lot of different videos, you may get biased just because you like a particular streamer or you like a particular YouTuber. That's why I tell you guys to not necessarily take everything I say. Take stuff I say with a grain of salt. It may not be right for you. And it's the same. Like, Vince paints differently than I do. And so his opinions on metallics may not be, what I'm looking for. So what I may do is I may get a bunch of metallics, form my own opinions, and then I might go and watch, because I like Vince's videos and I like his painting style and I think he's cool. He's a great person. And then I might go watch. And kind of then, because I have an opinion already, I'll be able to listen to his video more informedly. And to say, he thinks that, but I think this. That's probably just the difference in how we paint, right? So, stuff like that. Oh, I don't know anything about that, Pendrake. Yeah. Oh, yuck. Stainless steel powder bad. Because isn't it, well, actually, weird. Yeah, I'll have to, I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, the other tones almost have to be mica flakes. Interesting. Yeah, golden has a graphite. Yeah, I'd heard that. Interesting. But graphite isn't going to be terribly bright either. See, if you guys have watched any of my videos on metallics on big models, you know that what I do is I put down a very bright layer of metallics, and then everything else I do over the top of that. And I actually I darken it down a lot. And then the treatments that bring it back up after that, so that you get a lot of depth, in it, are important. And that's why I need something. That's why the air model color isn't doing it for me, because the finish isn't allowing the glazes to be as even as I want them. Your face may melt, but you'll live, Hug Wendy. Shipping from their new location. Yeah, I knew they were moving because they had a moving sale, but I didn't have the cash to take advantage of it, or I would have gotten myself another bottle of burnt umber. Yeah, interesting. Well, I'll look into the stainless steel powder. Does sound interesting. I'll definitely put it through its paces. And it's probably because it does give a better result. It's interesting, though. right? Because normally metal flakes are only solvent-based, like true metals. And because they react so poorly with water. That said, I have heard that, I do know from an insider, I do know that the end of the paint metallics industry is trying to beat that, is trying to chemically alter metal flakes so that they can actually do metal metallics without them exploding. Yeah, cedar is pretty nasty. It tries to kill me regularly out here because, of course, we've got a ton of cedar and redwood. And I never had this kind of reaction when I was in other parts of the country, so I think it must be the redwoods are trying to kill me. You moved to California and the redwoods try to kill you. It's okay. But yeah, thanks for the recommends, everybody. And I will grab a few bottles, I will experiment with some things, and then maybe I'll go watch Vince's video. But yeah, I find that, I really find that I paint differently than a lot of people because I thin so much. No, it wouldn't be solvent. Like, yeah, I don't think, I think probably why they use stainless steel flake instead of, is because it's non-reactive with water. Although, God, what you must have to do to get stainless steel ground down to that level, like, heavy duty, folks. Heavy, heavy duty. Nothing, Thormel. We're talking about metallic paint. I'm gonna seek out the metallics in the industry and do kind of a little test. I'm not a big metallics user, so I feel like I could stand to experiment a little, and I'm looking at painting a couple models more with metallics, so I'm like, I should look at what's out there in the industry, because I like to keep my knowledge base up to date and experiment. So I'm going to just put some yellow in there over that white. It's a couple drops of sunrise orange into the lantern yellow, which makes it just a little bit deeper in color. I added a little white too for coverage, just because it was like really translucent, and I did want a little bit of coverage on it. And you can do that to any of the clear bright type of colors, by the way. If any color is super bright but is transparent, you can add a tiny bit of white. I added like maybe half a drop. And just that little bit of white will help you immensely with coverage. And it won't change the color that much, honestly. And even if it did shift the color, all you'd have to do is mix up your original really transparent color and then put it over the top of what you just painted, and it would be fine. And we're going to get the interior of this really quick. All right, there we go. We got our yellowy, orangey. Yeah, I know, right? But that could be it too, Gibson. Because, yeah, what else are you going to get that's going to actually grind stainless steel down? Like, it's a very tough metal. And I wonder how fine they can get it. But I guess I'll find out when I use those flakes. Just going to make my potions this color. And because this is a very muted model, but because these areas are so small, we can get away with this. We can get away with this brighter yellow-orange on these areas. And it won't clash. If it was large, if we were trying to paint the cape or part of the cloth this color, it would clash and totally drag attention away. As it is, what I will do is I will glaze her hair with this color really subtly. So let's grab a little bit of this. I usually mix my glazes in the well above the actual color. Throw a bunch of water in there. I want to really, really thin it down because yellows, although they may lack coverage, actually are pretty strong when you glaze with them. They really can shift a color. So I have no idea, Gibson. I'm not willing to like go out on a limb with that because I've never heard of this before. It's just got to be hardcore. That's all I know. All right, so let's glaze with this color that we're actually using over the hair. This will make it a little more golden and a little less washed out. And now it will correspond better with this yellow here, because we've added a little bit of that color. It also makes the hair obviously blonde, taking away from that dark elf feel. And I'll probably highlight her skin a little bit to bring it up just one more level as well, since I really don't want her to be a dark elf. I will, let me see, we gotta do gemstones, right? That means I have to do gold on those gemstones though, or silver. I would think I might have been thinking of silver on them. All right, I need a liner, and I need liner, I need white, and I need to get my, if I'm gonna go silver with those, then I need my silver colors mixed up. Yeah. I was thinking diamond, Shadow Raven. I was thinking that the original idea was probably the correct one. And you're right, industrial diamond is less expensive. That's why we can all buy diamond files. Cubic zirconia sandpaper. Yeah, right? Pretty much. It just sounds so funky. Like, it's just so funky to think about it. Because we're all taught, like, stainless steel is super hard. And just imagine grinding it down to tiny little particles. I'm just like, yeah. Insane. Crazy talk. Total hardcore. All right, I want this rogue shadow just a little bit thinned down. Maybe a 3-to-1. And I just want it to touch up around some of these gem settings. Good stuff, huh? Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about one of the golden and Liquitex using stainless steel flake in their metallics, and that's where it came up, Florimel. If you weren't in for that, so yeah, now I'm interested. Now I want to kind of like go and see how that works, because I'll tell you, I'm wondering what the weight of that is too, relative to buoyancy and stuff. So. I'm betting it's more than mica, which means that it's gonna, if you thin it, it's gonna separate like a beast, unless they've got something else in there. So that's my theory. I'm gonna test it. This is the kind of crap that I do when I test paints, is I like to play around with them at different consistencies. Alrighty, so I believe I did actually base coat these little gem sockets with the silver mix that I wanted to use. I just need to touch up a little bit around the edges. So doing a gem like this, we can absolutely, the easy way to do this is going to be to tackle the darks and lights before we even paint the gem. It's going to be easier. So let's get some of our cloudy gray with a bit of our carbon scoring blue. I think I was using Akata actually, so because I was using carbon scoring and then Akata to highlight. And Akata is a lovely, lovely pale blue gray from the Pathfinder line. You should all own it because it's pretty. It's also a great highlight for blue grays. Hello, how's it going, Greg? Good morning. Happy imminent Halloween. Happy spooky month. I am painting a ghosty girl. And we're talking about metallics, because I want to play around with some of the newer metallics out there. I'm not a big metallics user, and I decided that I wanted to do metallics on a few models coming up. And I've got my same old like metallics that I've used for years, but I'm like, you know, there's bound to be other stuff in the industry that I haven't tried. So maybe I should, you know, actually go out there and try a bunch of different metallics. Then I'll actually have knowledge. Well, that's the same thing, actually, Ultra Squid. It is weight at a certain point. It's buoyancy. Weight and buoyancy is kind of, at this point, kind of the same. So what happens in metallics is that your base is thick enough as essentially to hold your flakes in suspension, even though they are heavier than water. But the minute you add too much water to your paint base, to the point where you change the viscosity of it enough, then the water is no longer strong enough. The flake is heavy, and so it sinks. It literally sinks in water because it no longer has the resins to hold it in position, the resins and the surfactants and all the other stuff in paint that holds your flake in suspension. So essentially, it's kind of the same thing. So intuitively, there's some stuff in paint chemistry that actually is very intuitive, and it's not rocket science, and that's one of them, is the heaviness of things. Yeah, so that's why I think that, and it depends, right? Because if stainless steel can be ground fine enough, then it will stay in suspension. Because, you know, the tinier a thing is, the more it'll stay in suspension in a fluid. But it depends, right? Because it is, I mean, relative to mica, which is a very lightweight stone, it is. But mica is still a stone, and that's why you still see your metallics separate when you add too much water. So that's why I find this sort of thing geeky interesting. All right, let's do some highlights on these little gemstones here. So we're going to, or on the facets, sorry, on the settings. So the silver setting. So we're going to put our highlights on first. This setting is a little bit wonky because it's right under her hood, so I think it's probably only going to get the outside highlight. Now, the reason you do it now, before you do the gems themselves, is because right now you can just mess up all you want with this tiny little, because the tiny little setting is this little tiny rim around the gem, right? So if you do it now, you can mess up onto the gem all you want because you still haven't painted the gem, so you're all good. But if you wait, you've got to worry about messing up the gem. So depending on which way you're most comfortable with, you can do. But I'll use essentially pure white on both sides and the top of a gem. I'll use just a lighter version of the metallic on the bottom, unless I need to really pop that highlight. But if they fall into an oil bath, they've added, I guess they'd have to wash it afterwards to get the oil off. If they did it that way, but I suspect it's a grind. Especially if diamond will work, and if industrial diamond is super cheap. I don't know. Essentially, they would use whatever they could do in very large batches cheaply, because that's the way industry works. So we're doing highlight on the top. There we are. Except that it might not work at a micro level there, Pendrake. I mean, if you're trying to make round things that are fairly large, you could do that sort of thing. But would it work with micro particles? Like, you need to, for a flake to be effective, it needs to be smaller than 1 micron. I'm not sure that the oil bath thing could work that way. But you never know. It's an interesting idea. And that's a little too dark. So we need to put shadows right under our highlights. So essentially, you've got light on top of the rim, and then you've got shadows after it hits the sides. And then, but I suspect grinding is the cheapest and easiest way. You could do large batches. Just speaking from my very limited industrial experience, every extra step you throw in there adds time and money. So if you had to do an oil bath and then you had to wash them, so then we put the liner over the top. There we are. So essentially, we do the rim, we bring up some highlights, and then we put we color in the gemstone with our liner, with a dark color. Because then we're going to be putting white, and then we're going to be doing the gemstone separately. Yeah, so every acrylic medium is going to be fine with that, you know, the cadmium, I mean, that's what they've been used to, right? I mean, before people started going anti-toxicity, you know, cadmium was a much beloved, those were much beloved paint colors, and still are to some people. Um, but, you know, so those were heavier. So, I mean, any paint medium is going to be just fine when you're using it straight out of the tube or the bottle. It's made to do that. But where you come in differently is when you start thinning it, as we do in our hobby. And that's when oh no, yeah, no, yeah, steel, regular steel, not good. It has to be stainless. That's what I'm saying. Like, there are flakes out there in the solvent industry that are made with like iron, and they will explode if you do water with them. Don't do it. Don't do it, man. Like, don't mix unless you know what's fluid reactive and what's not. Yeah, don't experiment on that. I advise you not to. Yeah, and if it wouldn't explode, then it would rust. So yeah, it's yeah, not advisable to mess with. But yeah, there's all sorts of beautiful flakes you can get for solvents that you absolutely cannot use in a water formulation. And it will actually, some of them will actually explode. Don't think I'm actually I'm not making that up. Well, plus if you're using diamond plates and you're sharpening things, probably those flakes are still bigger than a micron if you can see them. This is why it's you always if you want a smooth metallic, you don't want flakes that are bigger than a micron because that's what the eye can see. All industrial pigments right now are smaller than a micron. That's why whenever you thin your paint, you get that chalky feeling. You're not actually getting. Some people will tell you it's the white pigment. They're lying, or they just don't know, or they've been misled. It's not. It's usually the matting medium that you're seeing, which can clump, especially when thinned. But the pigment is always sub where most humans can see it. I don't know if there are humans that can see flakes under a micron that have that superpower. There's a paint that does that, Gibson. There is a paint that will, if applied over an alcohol-based metallic that is using an actual metal flake, that will actually naturally corrode the finish. I remember it. I don't remember who makes it, but that's actually a thing. Yeah, this is the muted color scheme. I've been doing bright for a while, so we got to do our muted stuff. I'm gonna actually highlight my yellows here. Throw some white in there because it's bothering me that these are kind of flat. Yeah, I wish I remembered which company did those the actual corrosion treatments. I'm going to do a little bit of a brighter highlight in the middle of all those sections. Ugh, so stuffy, so allergy. Right, I don't think it would work, Henrik. I don't know enough to know, but it sounds like... Yeah, I mean, remember that at less than a micron, you can't even see the stream. So, I don't think it's a practical thing. Interesting idea, but doubt it would be... I'm betting they traditionally grind, especially because they've got really refined like pigment grinding tech from just grinding regular old pigments. Yeah, but who knows? I don't know. I am not not in that market. All right, so let's see here. I'm going to want to do a little bit of yellow outside of the lantern as well, but let's keep going on to get distracted with our stuff. Get distracted from our gemstones and our silver NMM. I am probably squirrel-brained today. I got a lot of sleep last night, but I'm like, you know. For some reason, David wanted to go to bed really early last night, and like I don't know what his brain was on, but he was like, he's usually the night owl among us, and he was in bed at 10. I was like, whoa. I was happy though, because I got lots of sleep. I think it's because we put the puppy to bed so early. Because she's usually ready, either getting overtired and freaky, or she's ready to go to bed at between 9:15 and 10. Yeah, I don't know. I need to focus today because I almost got my PDF done yesterday for the Patreon. I didn't quite get it done. I want to focus and get that done. The puppy is a big distraction. She takes up a lot of time. But I can't always blame the puppy. Sometimes it's just my squirrel brain. So then we've got a little glimmers around the outsides of our gemstones, and we can grab our yellow. And the reason that we went silver around the outside edges is because we're making these gems yellow. It would be, it would kind of flow together if you used gold, since there'd be similar colors. It'd have to be, yeah, I mean, it'd have to be, I would, since nobody, I don't know of any other application for ground stainless, but I may be wrong there. Like, if there is an industrial application for ground stainless other than paint, then I can see them, like, going through somebody else. I mean, but maybe it is, I mean, a lab that grinds pigment probably has the capacity to grind many things. Or a facility that does. So I don't know. Who knows? Oh no. Yes, sneezes. Yeah. I don't sneeze a lot either, and when I sneeze the puppy is like, what are you doing, Mama? It's funny, animals. They get used to us, like, being ourselves, and then when a new thing comes in, they're like, whoop. Yes, what is this noise you just made, right? Yeah, sometimes it happens to me, Crowley. Sometimes meditation helps with shutting my brain off, but sometimes I just have to go and have a very small snack. And I found that if I have a very small snack, that my brain will calm down, and then I can sleep. It's just for me. I don't know if it works for anybody else, but and I mean, it works like 99% of the time, so maybe it's the blood sugar. You get the blood sugar spike from eating a little thing, and then maybe that helps you go to bed. I have no idea. Oh, the sniffles. Your kitty. Your kitty is like a special kitty, Wendy. Right. Yes, I'm sure powdered steel, that's a little easier, but powdered stainless, I don't know. Like, powdered stainless is its own beast, I suspect. And the reason, I mean, I'm sure powdered steel is a lot cheaper, for one thing, okay? A lot easier, a lot cheaper. And if it's already was used in Damascus forging, double so, I would imagine that it's a lot cheaper than stainless. Stainless, granular stainless does sound to me like very much a surfaces, like somebody needed powdered steel that worked with water, and that's why they made powdered stainless. Like that's really the reason to do it. And again, I am not an expert, so, but I could see that being a motivator. So who knows? You're a very nervous kitty. Like if you've seen Bob Radelphi and Julie Guthrie, if you've seen their Scaredy Cat figure, it came out at the same time as the Ghost Bride years ago. But it's a Halloween figure, and it's the Scaredy Cat, and with the poofed tail and everything, and the arched back. I think of that when you mention your kitty and her foibles. I think of that. Kiki is growing out of her puppy look now. She looks like she's getting to be an adolescent dog. Gonna add in my shadow. And of course, at this point, if you do happen to blorf out onto the leather, it's pretty easy to touch it up. Like, you're probably going to blorf onto the leather right next to it, and you could just use liner. Yeah, very agreed, yeah. Should get used to sneezing mommy eventually. Yep. You tasty kitty. Poor kitty. All right, so now we'll put our white over the top again. Yellow gems are not like the easiest gem to do. Like, they never look great in my opinion, just because you can never surround them with a, I mean, maybe if they were much bigger, but at this scale it's really hard to do a yellow gem that looks good. Just because you don't have enough room to give it depth. If I made them more orange, I might like them better. But I wanted to keep pretty limited palette here. Yeah, she won't test you whatever. That's funny. Poor kitty, though. Poor anxious kitty. That's the kind of cat where if you like moved, you'd be really worried about her. Like if you moved like actually to a different apartment or something, that changed her environment. I'm sorry, your kid is so convinced that she's that she's not long for the world. Poor kiddo. All right, let's put some orange shadows on this. Let's make it a little bit more. Try to give it more depth. Oh dear. And then I have to like try to figure out my lantern thingy. So I'll put the orange on the top part of the gem. And I'm using it full, I'm not actually using it thinned. Gonna add a little bit of that orange over here in these glasses too. Just to keep everything consistent. Oh, and I've got a gem on that dagger, and that dagger totally needs color. Dang it. Oh, $20 per pound, yeah. That's pretty cool, Shadow Raven. Well, not as expensive as I thought. Although it couldn't have been that expensive if places were using it in pigment. But if it's $20 a pound, then the question is, how much is regular steel per pound? Regular ground steel, powdered steel. Like, how does it compare? Since you found that information, you are now my go-to Googler person for this. You can ignore me if you want. I'm just curious now. Because, I need to check, but that is cheaper than mica, I think. Although I'd have to look at the actual grind. It's got to be super fine. But we will get some colors over here to balance this out. Cool. Putting straight orange on, I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to highlight, I'm going to add a little bit of white to my lantern yellow for this highlight. So that orange is a little different, but still in family. Oh, interesting. That's good. Right. Yeah, and well then she's functional. She's a functional scaredy cat. That's cool. I'm glad she's not like wasn't totally disoriented by all that. There we go. So we've got a little bit of a highlight there. That's good. Yeah, but I'm pleasantly surprised at the low cost of powdered stainless steel. Who knew? Technology is a wonderful thing. Gets us all sorts of weird crap to play with. I'm going to put a highlight on my gems. Yeah, it does show up. There is enough of it there. It's strong enough that it shows up, but it's not overpowering, and that's the important thing, because she's got such a muted color scheme. I wouldn't want it to totally overpower. So notice how I'm going, like with my warmest colors, pretty far away from her hair up here, because I don't want to totally bleach out the hair with comparison. But yeah, this is working. And I do need to re-highlight the hair since I put glazes over it since the last time I was painting it. Alrighty, and then white highlights on these little gems. I'm not gonna like sweat these gems too much. Really, I just want them to be done. I'm not like trying to make them amazing because I know that I've got so little contrast that mucking with these tiny little gems is just kind of a waste of time. So like when you have a detail on your models, guys, that is really tiny, and you know that the color scheme is going to kind of give you problems as far as, you know, stuff showing up, or, you know, it's not optimal, but it's what you're going with for your colors anyway. Don't sweat it. Understand that there are weaknesses to your choice, and just don't sit and try to agonize over it. These are such small details that really I just need to have them done, and they don't have to look amazing. I know that I'm already working with a very weak color. That's when it's this small. So I'm just going to get it done and just be done with it. Yeah, strong flight. Well, it probably kept her alive as a feral kitty. I mean, there's nothing That's the thing, though, about like behavioral responses that are rooted in like ancient, you know, DNA, right? Is it doesn't necessarily help you in the modern world. It's like breeds of dogs that used to be guardian breeds and never would allow a stranger onto the property. And in the olden days, that was awesome and you wanted it. But in today's world, you can't have that because if your dog bites somebody, it's done. So it's like all these breeds that used to be known for their protective, ferocious temperaments and fearless temperaments have gotten bred to be friendlier and friendlier because they have to be in the modern world. So it's like those old instincts don't help you anymore. They're a hindrance. It's interesting to me. It's like every time somebody brings up that, you know, like that humanity, like a lot of our systems are still rooted in like old hunter-gatherer DNA, you know? And so like sometimes we're still working with that stuff. And when we get anxiety, it's like the kiddo. It's like in the old days that would have served us and kept us alive. And these days it just makes our lives hard. Yeah. So it is significantly, so yeah, 1/3 the cost pretty much, huh? Yeah, so that makes sense then. So you'd use steel powder where you could, but then there are going to be some very significant applications then that you want stainless steel powder, and you're going to pay the extra when you need that because it's still cheaper than a mica flake, but they haven't figured out how to make it colored yet. So that's why they're still using mica for golds, I bet. So just with these little rings, all you really need is that gray base coat and some lining at the edges and just a touch of white in the middle of the top and the bottom to pick up that light. That's all you really need. Silver is so easy. Now for the buckle, I did a highlight at the top, the tongue there, and I am going to put a little bit of a shadow down there. The buckle is big enough that I can sneak a shadow on, but a lot of these other areas are not. And so your lining becomes your shadow around the edges, and you just have your little dot highlights. You do not need a lot. I'll put a little bit of a shadow here on the buckle. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to industrial, and I count Liquitex and Golden as, I mean, they're pretty big companies. So they're going to gravitate toward whatever is cheapest and still gives them a good result. So now I'm curious to try those steel flakes. We'll see how I feel after I play with them. They're bound to be good at some things and bad at others. It's just the way the world works. Everything is, there's always a plus to something, but there's almost always a minus to it too. But usually with arts, that's usage based as far as how you use it. Alrighty. So I've got some silver. Now I've got a lot of golds. I've got my steel on my sword to do though, so I should do that. Alrighty, let's thin down. Now I always base coat my my NMM steel on blades, and that is because I like to use some wet blending. And I like to have the base coat down before I start playing with the wet blends. So in general, and of course the sword is thick and normally you would not have this much of an edge, but you're going to paint it anyway. I usually start dark on the top because the tip is kind of curved upward. And then I'm going to go down and I'm going to hit a paler color here. So block, blend. And you can just block this in and then just do layering on either side to layer it in. If you aren't into the wet blending like I am, I just find that wet blending of this sort of thing is a lot easier and faster. But that's because wet blending is definitely part of my toolkit and it may not be part of yours, and that is cool. It's not a necessary technique, it just makes some things faster and easier. And with NMM steel, I find that wet blending does make it both faster and easier. Because otherwise it can be a pain in the butt because you're going from near white to near black. And so when you are doing that, it's just the hardest blend when you're doing that on a fairly small surface. So I've got kind of that. I need my gray liner. I always use gray liner for this. Where are you, gray liner? Yeah, gray liners, I was doing Rogue, but it's got just enough red in it that I didn't like it. So I'm going to grab my gray liner and mix that up. I use gray liner a lot for NMM steel. I do like to mix a little bit of color into it, just again so it doesn't go too flat. I'll probably add just a tiny bit of carbon scoring glue in there. So when I talk about that, I'll probably squeeze just a little bit out onto the cap. And then I will just grab just a tiny bit, just a little tiny bit, and I'll add that to my gray liner. That's going to be just enough to push it a little bit away from being a total neutral. I'm going to thin my gray liner by at least, I'm going to probably do a 2-to-1. I can always layer it up. And then we'll work with that. All right. And the reason I use liners for shading, because I was using Rogue Liner first, you remember. The reason I use liners for shading on NMM is because they don't have the high coverage value that Pure Black does. Pure Black is a very high coverage color, which means that it tends to take over and it's harder to blend. And so a translucent color like a liner is going to be much easier to blend. Because it's already translucent. So the black pigment that's used in our liners is actually a more translucent black than the black pigment you'll find in our Pure Black and other black paints. And that is what enables me to use it more as a blender, is that translucency. Again, we're back to translucency is not a detriment. It's a feature in certain applications. Which is why I hope that Reaper never changes the characteristics of MSP, because we really are unique in the market. Now I'm going to do that edge highlight that Sergio is so fond of. Pure white. Sergio and many other painters. So use the side of your brush, unload your brush. This white is at 2-to-1. You want it to be thin, but you don't want excess on your brush because you don't want a big blob to come off. And just use the side of your brush on the edge to get that edge highlight. This is easy on an edge like this, which is a 90-degree angle. It is harder down the line here. Obviously, it's easy on the underside. So we'll do that part right now. Again, just the side of the brush. Super simple. Here you actually have to have a little brush control because it's harder to... If some people can do this edge, I prefer to just try to just dot and dash it. So I'm just going to kind of do a little quick line. And it doesn't matter if it's perfect because you're going to come in and color this area anyway, so you can refine it. In fact, I could probably wait. But the thing is, if I do the line now, I can just work with it and refine it. Whereas if I do it later, I might cover up blending I've done, and then I have to redo the blending, and that's kind of annoying. So I'd rather redo the line than the blending. And this way I can be messy with this line, and then as I add in colors above and below it, I'm just going to trim it down and make it more even. So, all right, basic principles of NMM when you're on a blade is right above your highest highlight, which is of course going to be here on the top edge, you're going to have a dark shadow. The dark shadow then is going to blend up to another highlight reflection here. Now, if you're doing kind of a black, dark and white pattern, as is popular these days, then you're still going to do this, but a little bit different. So let's do that. Let's block in. I'm going to actually do a little bit more water here into my gray liner. And I'm going to actually add a little bit of my cloudy gray into my gray liner as well. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit so that it's going to work well with my gray liner. So if you're going to do your shadows and highlight thing, if your blade is actually angled like a diamond, where this section is actually facing slightly upward, you'd do this different. You'd actually do the entire upper surface lighter. But this blade is flat on the sides and angled down on the underside. So because it's flat, we're going to do it a little bit different. So if you want to do the dark and light bands, I'm still going to keep this side a little bit more light, I think. But I'm going to start up here. And again, if I mess up and block off this line on this edge, it's really easy to bring it back just with my edge highlighting. So don't sweat it and don't freak out. And again, I can use this shadow to kind of refine that thin line down that edge. So I'm going to do one shadow here, and I'm going to do another shadow right down here. And I blocked out my line a little bit, but that's okay. So now, I am actually going to do a really, really thin dark shadow right under that top highlight. I am. But I'm not going to take it all the way down across the blade like I did these guys. I'm just going to do it right under. Just a real thin line. And I'm just going to make it bigger here to suggest there are things in the environment that the blade is reflecting. That's what you're doing when you're doing these bands of dark and light that people like to put on these blades, is you are just suggesting that there are things in the environment that are being picked up by the blade, and you are they're just depicting as a shadow right now. They're blocking the light, and the color isn't strong enough, or they aren't close enough, or the blade's not shiny enough to actually reflect the shadow. Now, all of this variance, all of these multiple bands of light and dark are not really realistic. If you look at an actual sword in an actual setting, usually you will see maybe one area of shadow and one bright highlight. So this is very fanciful, this type of thing, this pattern thing that we do on our miniatures. It would be much more realistic to just put like one kind of area of shadow to show one opponent or thing. I'm going to just tighten this up a little bit. I'm going to bring in a little bit of light here. This is probably the main light down the side. So I'm really blocking it in. I'm going to work on the top part first. And again, I'm going to be using layering and wet blending. Wet blending in small areas like this can be kind of a pain. So really I'm going to kind of sweep my, use my gray as kind of almost a glaze at first, a layer. And I decide I'm going to maybe shrink down my shadow area just a little bit. Blend that in a little bit, make it a little less huge and big. Yeah, it's not a realistic, I mean, it's a very fanciful thing, and it can look way cool. But in most situations, it's not realistic. Let me see if I can quick find a reference for you. I actually have a photographic reference for this. And I have to go all the way back to before I moved. But I think I can find it because it'll be right before I moved. Oh, Kiri at the Ocean. I remember that. Let's see here. Oh, there's Texas. I think it was the last time I went to the Renaissance Fair. Maybe it was the year before, though, that I took the pictures. The great thing is, since I know when the Renaissance Fair runs in Texas, I can just look in those months. I do have a great Sky-Earth reference for you, though. How's that for a Sky-Earth reference? Yes, that is actually a Dodge Ram truck, and that was just too cool, so I had to save that. Anyway, back to the ranch. Where is my... There they are. All right. So what you really see is this. These are swords on a wall in a shop, obviously. You can see that there is, the light is coming from outside. There is a person that is blocking the light source, and so you are seeing this shadow pop down. You also are seeing hints of color, right? You're seeing kind of a rosy pink, kind of a dusky pink, probably a flesh color, and you're seeing green. Actually, there is a bit of green here in these, from the trees outside, from the light reflecting off the trees. The light coming in is very green, and there's a green thing there. It's not showing up too well on camera, but it is there. So that's more like what you would actually probably see. In order to get something that's really banded and barred like this, you'd have to have multiple, like they'd have to be fairly, like a little bit farther away, and there'd have to be a pretty bright light. So like that, and then here we've got, again, now you can see the green in the light and the shield here reflecting. You can also see the light and then the dark right underneath it, like I always tell you guys. This one doesn't have an under reflection because there's a lot of ambient light. Let's see here. And these guys, you can really see the green on there. This sword is so far down that and it's tilted so that all it's getting is like the green light from outside with a little bit of shadow and then the light. So you can see that that varies greatly. And here you really just have a lot of light, and then it shades down to there, and then you get a little bit of light there at the tip. So things like that. Let's see here. Also, I had some stuff, some big pole axes. So here, you can see that edge highlight, can't you? Based directly on reality. And look, you can kind of see an edge highlight up here too. And then you can also see, just very slightly, that there is a darker shadow right under that and a darker shadow, really micro. So we overemphasize this stuff. And then there's another, this is light interruption for sure. So yeah, so things like that. It's good to go to Renaissance fairs and take pictures, because then you can get a lot of things in a lot of areas. Let's see. Oh, this is a really good one. So this one is faced away from the light. You've got your really bright highlight with a lot of shadow. Since this surface is like the way that the light is coming in and dancing across the flat, you kind of get a little bit of that streaky undulation, right? You get that light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. You definitely still see that edge highlight. You see edge highlight here, you see an edge highlight here, you see that the outside is picking up a bit of light here. So that's where that edge, that white edge thing that we do here, that's where that comes from. It is based on reality. We just overemphasize it on miniatures, like we overemphasize everything on miniatures, right? We overemphasize our shadows, we overemphasize our highlights, and we overemphasize NMM. So yeah, I took a lot of photos that day. I took some brocade photos too. Brocade photos, because you never know when you might want to do like really cool brocade patterns, and well, now you've got references. So I took pictures of a lot of dresses that day as well. Let me see if I've got anything else cool in here. You can see the way that these are forged, that they just generally, the steel is going that way, the way that they've been created. You get that kind of streaky effect on them. This is another nice one because you can see, again, that kind of pinkish reflection, which is probably somebody in a pink or red shirt standing outside the shop. And you still got those bands of light and dark. So yeah, so normally what you see then is maybe you see a little bit of light up here, you see that dark, and then you just see light. And we do it differently just because, it gives us a little bit more interest, right? Visual interest. So yeah, those are my reference picks for all sorts of things. Just reminds me kind of. Yeah, it's the way it's got to be because you got to make it stand out, Gibson. So you always overemphasize. And remember to oversimplify as well. Like in some ways, we're making this more complex than it would probably be. But when you're like, if you go outside and you try to take pictures of your helmet and sword outside, you're going to find real quick that you're going to see a lot of tiny details that you remember that you wouldn't see a lot of that on actual, like in this scale. So you always have to ask yourself, if you see a tiny detail in real life, remind yourself you probably would not see it at this scale unless you choose to overemphasize it for some reason. And you should always have a logical reason why you're overemphasizing. So I'm going to bridge this because that's where my main light source is coming in. So I'm going to kill my dark shadow. It would be there in person, it just wouldn't be there at this scale. It's also very hard to wet blend at this scale, at this size, because this is such a tiny area and the paint dries really fast. The way that I can get around that is to thin it more. The more water it's got in it, the longer it's going to stay wet, and the more I can do micro wet blending. Which is why I always work over a base coat when I'm working at this scale if I'm trying to do very small wet blends. Because obviously if I thin my paint to the point where I can do a really good wet blend at a very small scale, it's not going to cover very well. But it'll cover well enough over a base coat to do the thing I want. Essentially, Gibson, and the reason that we have to emphasize is that the smaller the scale, the more it's harder to see details. So if we want those details to come out, we have to emphasize them, which means that we're never really painting very realistically. It's hard to paint a very realistic 28 mil. You can do it, but it doesn't work as well as it does with a very realistic 54 or 75 or bust. The bust, of course, is the kind of the master of realism, busts and statues. So if I want to really mix it up, I can pop another shadow in, or another highlight in there. But that's probably over complexifying. So yeah, if you want to try really realistic eyes and textures and metals and all that stuff, gravitate slowly toward painting bigger things. It gives you the room you need and the scale you need to be able to bring out the textures and the things you would see. You have a better chance of making those realistic. Or it just, what happens if you paint it realistically, Gibson, is it just doesn't show up, like the details. You lose a lot of the details. Oh, Crowley. Yeah. Have fun, Crowley. Thank you for the Kiri face. So David was just like, "You're a really good-looking dog," to Kiki last night when he was looking at her, and I'm like thinking to myself, "This is her ugliest stage. You just wait." I suspect that when Kiki is full grown, she'll be a traffic stopper. The plush Shilohs tend to be, and she's got a really good face. She's going to be a pretty girl. I'm going to have to print some cards up. We always, because our breed isn't very known, especially it's not known out here in California, actually, because we haven't had a breeder out here, I don't think. But we carry around little business cards with our website on them so that people, when we say Shiloh Shepherd and people get the blank look, we can be like, if you're interested, here is the website. Yeah, if they haven't told you it's not going to be on, then maybe it'll be on, right? All right, so we got this top part looking okay. Let's get onto the bottom part. Down here, the light's going to be less glancing down the side and more under reflections, so it's not going to be as bright as our lining around the outside. One thing I did kind of lose, I lost a little bit of this edge highlight. So I want to keep that up, keep that bright. Because again, 28 millimeter, we are overemphasizing. So I'm not going to go all the way up to a white on the underside here. I'm going to go to a light gray instead. Except on the edge highlight. The edge highlight gets to keep its lightness. And I'm going to bring this all up here toward the tip. I'm going to bring it up to pure white. Right up here on the top. Make sure I've got my edge emphasized. And I'll grab my light gray. And then once again, this is a place where I would use a well palette, by the way. If you use a wet palette, yes, you'll have your paint naturally thinner. But sometimes it works in opposite, depending on how much water is in your, like what paper you're using and how much water is in your sponge and all the rest. So if you notice that your paint actually is kind of tacky when you're using a wet palette, either fill up your wet palette more or switch to a well if you're trying to do micro wet blending. 80, we have an 80% probability of Reaperlive and a Reaperland and a 65% chance of rain. It's like a weather forecast. I'm going to bring in a little bit more lighter color down here and wet blend it. So there, we've got our shiny silver alternating blade thing, which now looks crazy next to the rest of the figure, which is very, very dull. Like, it's very shiny, right? It looks very shiny next to the rest of the figure. So I'm really going to have to bring up some more NMM over here to balance out that super shiny blade, because she has really soft colors and really soft leathers. She's not got other shiny stuff on her, really. So yeah, I'm going to need to bring up some stuff over here to counter that super shiny blade, which is totally distracting right now. So this is the thing about as accurate as a weather forecast. So this is a great example of how NMM actually can detract from your miniature. NMM, because it is so stylized and because you're putting tight detail in small areas, does kind of count as freehand. So both the intricate handle here, which I still have to, I think, hit top highlights on, but this sort of thing is pretty tightly controlled, and it's also got a lot of contrast, right? So it's going to distract from the rest of the model, like it's going to pull your eye. So, so to balance that, I probably need to bring up higher contrast up here, and I need to obviously do the metals still on some other areas that are bigger, like this. As I bring up more metal across the model, then the eye will start to dance around. It'll kind of balance out. But right now, with just that sword, it's crazy distracting. So that's kind of an example, guys, of how you can get in trouble on a model doing that. And yeah, the answer is I've got to bring up the skin tones probably sharper. I need to do the eyes, and I need to bring up more contrast here on the head. One way to solve this would be to actually put a freehand symbol, maybe the Ghostwalkers emblem if they've got one, but a freehand symbol right here on the crown of her hood. And if I painted some freehand right here, that would balance out the NMM here, because it would be another small cluster of detail, and it would be placed where we want to look, right on her face. So does that make sense to everybody? But that's how you can get in trouble with NMM. So yeah, we've got a lot more NMM to do on her since I took my time on all those bits, and I still haven't done the gemstones on the arms. I've got 5 minutes, so we'll do it. No, I think Quindy is the forecaster. I only guess. Besides, I live in the Bay Area, in the South Bay, and that means the weather forecast is almost always 70 degrees and partly sunny till the afternoon when it becomes fully sunny. Really easy. I have the easiest weather forecasting ever in the South Bay. Because it's always the freaking same. We just vary in temperature by 40 degrees throughout the year. Well, if they haven't told you it's off, hopefully that gives you a reasonable percentage chance of being right, Quindy. Anybody have anything cool you're going to do for the weekend? I am going to be fully recuperating from the wedding now that we've gotten the house back to mostly normal. Pumpkin carving, yay, fun, Kodiak. Oh, a wedding to go to. Much better than being in one. D&D Paint Club, of course. Do they have anybody running Paint Club these days, Zachariah? Or just people helping people as it comes up? Nice. Yay, you all have good stuff. Just kind of showing up right now. I was going to say, you could totally, like, run it. But, I mean, it's always, I don't know. I think it's nicer if you just have people there who can help. Because I always felt, you know, like I was working 6 days a week since I was the official rep. Yeah, exactly. Well, I never pushed myself either. I just let people know. But yeah. Yep, decompress with doggos. Sounds good. Get some painting in there, Dogfather? Since you actually have a weekend and since you just had a vacation. Yeah, good. Gonna say, gotta take time for your hobby when you can. I know you have a stressful job, so. Right, exactly. Yeah, and I would always answer questions. Like you give people feedback on their stuff if they want it. And sometimes people just need a pat on the head. Like sometimes people just need to be told good job. Keep going. That's most often. And some people want serious feedback. I'm going to do a quick NMM on this side, on this little gem, and then at least I'll have all the little gems highlighted in. But yeah, we're going to watch some Overwatch League. Probably quite a bit of painting this weekend, actually. Ah, I blorfed on that. Bad Ann, no blorfing. But yeah, I'm just happy that happy the wedding is over and happy that I have some me time coming up. And soon it's National Novel Writing Month. November 1st. And I am conflicted over what I'm going to be working on. So I need to figure that out. But hopefully before November 1st. I got married, Thormel. And I am very happy that it is done. Because family in town is stressful to me. Thought I had announced that well before your vacation, though. But maybe you didn't hear. Yes, mostly I feel like it's congratulations on surviving having family in town. But yes. Thank you muchly. We are happy. No, Kiki could not participate. Because the venue is right next to, is essentially part of a wildlife refuge, and so dogs are not allowed because they will disturb the wildlife. That was fine though. Keekster managed. She was like seriously upset because dinner went like 3 hours, and she'd never been left alone for that long, especially not at night. But she managed. It didn't seem to scar her for life, as she barks. We all manage. And hopefully soon we get to a point where I don't get any more dog scars on my arms. She's getting better. She still has her very overexcited moments. Yep. 23rd. Yeah, I always wanted an October wedding, and now I finally have one. But now David and I have to update our anniversary status. You know, our old anniversary was the anniversary of us starting dating, and now that becomes our date-iversary. And previously to that, we had a date, not a date-iversary. So then we have a date, not a date-iversary, a date-iversary, and a anniversary. But our date-iversary is easy to remember because it's Adepticon. So... Oh no, Quinty. Yeah, I mean, I don't really count. I won't count the pup-iversary. I mean, we have a puppy birthday. I know Kiki's birthday, but I don't want to count from the day I brought her home because I have terrible memories of that time. So no, we're not going to celebrate the day I brought Kiki home. Sorry. We're going to celebrate Anne surviving. Yeah, I like to do the, I like keeping the date-iversary because it's almost 6 months separate from our wedding because it's, you know, the end of March. So then we got 7 months in between there, or I guess it's actually 6. So it is actually 6 months apart. Whereas our date, not a date-iversary, is right around BlizzCon, so that actually is too close to our wedding. So now I have to drop November 4th. Unless I decide that like October 16th to November 4th are just extra days for us to celebrate. Just like when you get older and you get more time to, you know, more presents, right? You should get more presents as you get older. Birthdays. That's what my mom believes. I'm totally on with this. All right, that finishes up our gemstones and their settings. So that's what I really wanted to do today. Plus we got half the sword done, but that's fine. I can finish that up at a different time. So we've got our silver done, except for the back of the sword, and we have our gold yet to do. So that is coming up, and also I need to refine the lantern and make it look nicer. Oh, nice, Agent Marvel. Yeah, you get fireworks for your date anniversary. We have a whole convention for our date anniversary. But there we go. Okay, guys, so this is Friday. This concludes your Friday. For Monday, we're skipping the genies. I want to do more spooky stuff, and Mouseling in the dungeon is spooky enough because of the lighting effect. A lot of people want to do lighting effects when they're doing spooky minis, so I'm going to do this. So on Monday, we'll be working further with our lighting effect. Those of you who remember, we actually did finish putting in our darks, and now we are starting to warm up our colors and bring in the effect of the torchlight on the Mouseling. We started on the face last time. Hi, Flint. Yeah, you actually popped in at the end of the stream. Sorry about that. We were working on our Ghostwalker lady here today. And then, yeah, Monday I will be back at 11:30 USA Central Time. And we'll be working on bringing out our highlights for our lighting effect on our Mouseling. So see you guys. I will be doing, I think I will be doing my own personal stream tomorrow on twitch.tv/paintingbig. And yeah, we will, I'll be working on something. I don't know. I've got so many great things to work on that I'm not sure what I'll be working on. But I'll be working on something. Probably something big. All right. Yes. So awesome. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Yep, and there's all Reaper social media, and there's all my stuff. I have a Patreon, patreon.com/paintingbig, and I will finish that PDF today if it kills me. If not, I'll have to finish it tomorrow, unless it killed me. So yes, have a great day, guys, and I hope you all get your Reaper land later, and if not, well, maybe I'll see you on Twitch tomorrow. Bye-bye.